All right, folks, welcome back to Mike and Maurice's Mind Escape. We have episode number 21. Today we discuss the documentary on Netflix, Wild Wild Country and Spirituality with our good buddy, Chris Emmerson.
What's up?
Oh man, dude, I fucking watched the wrong movie. I watched Wild Wild West.
You watched No Country for Old Men, huh?
No, I did. Fuck.
Is that like Will Smith?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that is Will Smith
Great.
and what's the other guy's name? Kevin Kline, is that his name?
Yep.
Classic.
Great fucking partner movie.
Yeah.
Uh,
All right, let's jump into this thing. So we're going to talk about Wild Wild Country. Spoiler alert, if anybody hasn't seen it that's watching this, you might want to turn off now because it is a good documentary and you don't want to ruin it. But anybody that's seen this thing, I mean, I think it's one of the better documentaries I've seen in the last 5 years.
it's crazy. Yeah.
What was your first impression? I mean, obviously you're into Eastern philosophy and Vedanta and all that stuff. And, obviously he's, a spiritual leader with a bunch of sannyasins under him. What did you think about that whole, mindset of all that?
Well, I actually had read a book of Osho's like maybe 7 or 8 years ago or something. So I knew about him, but the craziest thing to me was I never heard about this commune stuff.
So what? You just thought he was a good dude, or?
No, what happened was I used to teach guitar at a music academy, and one of the teachers was really into Osho. Like she was always like talking about and after you don't get too many clips of him in the documentary, but he's really kind of a provocateur kind of guy. So she was always talking about him. And anyway, I actually traded Philosophy of Freedom, which my dad was talking about last week, by Rudolf Steiner, for I don't even remember the title of the Osho book, but I read it and I was, what's that?
I'll try and.
He's got a
find it.
ton of books, so you might have to weed through
okay,
some
never
stuff.
mind.
Yeah, I don't know which one it was in particular. Maybe if I saw the book, I'd remember. But I was like, I was not feeling it.
Right.
At all. So like, I didn't connect with him at all. Like even
Based
before
on
I
his
knew about-
nature, though, right? Like, would you say it's because
based on
his nature
right-
didn't align with your nature, right?
Well, I just some of his takes, I just like for instance, I feel like he was more into the idea of attempting to satiate your desires to exhaust them, which is pretty much the exact opposite of what I find to be helpful. I think that that's the biggest thing. Then there's other things like everybody should get divorced and nobody should be married is one of his big things. He's
well, that was the weird contradiction, because that's inevitably what took him down in the documentary, which forced him to leave the country, was the fact that he was performing these arranged marriages with people that were from different countries and aligning them with people that had citizenship. So it was almost like this fucked up, I'm sure there's people that do that or whatever, but when you have a whole community of people, thousands of people doing that kind of shit, that is a big problem.
Yeah.
An open marriage and open sex, and that commune, supposedly there's people just having sex in the streets constantly, and there was kids there and shit like that. And I just felt like, what was crazy to me, what really started to get through to me that this is some crazy shit, is when they talked about the part where there's a guy from like Germany that did like a documentary, or he snuck a camera into like one of their private sessions, and it literally shows these people like acting like monkeys, throwing each other against the wall and dancing and then fucking each other and then raping each other and then hugging each other and then dancing with each other. Do you remember the part that I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's really
it's fucking crazy shit.
Are they on drugs and shit?
No, there's no drugs allowed there. That was the crazy. They were all doing kundalini, supposedly. I think there was probably stuff there, but they were supposedly doing kundalini, which is a form of, what is that, yoga, where it activates the, the serpent within, supposedly. And I don't know. I've seen people do kundalini, but I've never seen it done in the way that he was teaching these people how to do it. So
yeah, well, so yeah, so it was, that was the big trip for me, was like that I had never heard about this whole thing.
I know, right?
In
I've asked
Oregon.
people about it. I've asked older people that were like old enough to know what was going on. Nobody even remembers this thing. It's
Isn't that
shocking.
crazy?
What,
Yeah.
they just swept it under the rug or something?
Well, apparently, yeah.
Well, it was a big deal though, because in the documentary, it shows in the news, like they tried to assassinate like some guy that was like, you know, a candidate or something, and then they tried to assassinate all these people, and then they poisoned 700 people in this county to affect an election in which they would take over the county.
Yeah, they were like,
Because that
they were
Bhagwan
pretty
guy, what
ruthless.
did he say? He's like Sheila, his. We'll get into this in a second. I'll talk about the hierarchy of it and everything. But his, what was called his assistant or secretary, I think they called it, Sheila, was this woman who he had sent her to America when she was 16 or 17 to learn. You know, in America, and they wanted to move his commune from India to somewhere else, and they kept getting shut down all these places. So he fired his old secretary and sent this chick to America, and then they wanted to build something there based on the Constitution and everything. So, but this Sheila lady that was helping him run the thing, I mean, she just got out of hand. That was, I think, you know, they were both, I think both of their natures were flawed, but I think hers was, she didn't have really much empathy from what I could see at all.
Gosh, yeah. Yeah, I think that if you're in a position like that, like OSHO, I'm going back to OSHO though, where you have I'm assuming genuine seekers, you know, coming to you for answers and for what they, you know, I just feel like if you have people coming to you and you have that kind of power and position, and then you abuse that, it's really, it's awful. But I think it points to a larger point of like not getting attached to a figure or the teacher himself, but just what is he actually saying? Does it make sense? You know, because if you get attached to the, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, isn't that kind of what that Bikram yoga dude did? I mean, he obviously wasn't doing as bad as stuff as this sounds, but some people kind of like worship him. He has like multiple wives and all that. I
mean, yeah, it's these are,
what cult leader doesn't have multiple wives? That's like a prerequisite for it. Multiple wives.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, but then yeah, the Sheila character was really intense.
And, I gotta say though, she had a lot of balls though. She you know, I think that's what made the documentary so fascinating. Yes, you had this man, he was a spiritual leader, but we've seen these spiritual leaders before. I think it was a combination of his nature, which I think was not a nature like you were saying that I can align with, because I don't think that those are the right things that I would be preaching in that position of power, but he did. And I think there was a part where they talk about Sheila. I think I went in a circle before, but I was going to bring this up when Sheila talked to him and they were talking about, he's like, I'm not Jesus, I'm not Gandhi. He's like, you know, Jesus taught turn the other cheek. He's like, I say take both their cheeks, you know, like that's some fucked up shit to say, you know.
Well, okay, that's actually an interesting topic to go into if you want to. Because the Swamiji that I follow, Parthasarati, he actually had a little bit of a criticism for Gandhi's movement and maybe the Indian people as a whole, in the sense that they misunderstood the concept of ahimsa, nonviolence, and took it too literally. Whereas if you look at the Bhagavad Gita, it's a story about Krishna talking to Arjuna saying, no, you're a warrior. There are these people that are have taken over your people and are basically the story is really about the battle within, righteousness versus unrighteousness. You know what I mean? He's like, so basically the story is if there's something that is unrighteous that you are knowingly doing, you have to destroy that in yourself. And then if there's a battle that has to be fought, it has to be fought. Now, not to the point where you should be violent just to gain whatever, goal you have. But in the case of if somebody's being violent to you, you have to fight back.
Well, of
They would
course,
literally let people, beat them.
right.
And so his point was the violence is in the intention, not just the mere action. In fact, that's a huge part of.
But what you're saying makes a lot of sense too, because like even if you read like about Jesus's life, Jesus had John who protected him, and like so like if he was a big dude, so if like Jesus got in trouble or somebody tried to fuck with him, John would just come in and beat the shit out of people, and he was fine with that. He just wasn't going to do that,
Well,
so what you're saying, like defend yourself, yes, but don't go out of your way to cause, like for instance, these Rajneeshi people. So like people were the people of the town that were being taken over. They were like a small town, and they were a bunch of like backwoods farmers, and had grazing cattle and sheep and all that stuff. So they were just like small town people, and these people came in. It was like aliens invading. So like they literally didn't know what to do, and a lot of these people started like waving guns and stuff like that. So the Rajneeshis, they didn't shoot anybody, but the Rajneeshis took that as like a warning, and they started stockpiling guns. They said at one point they had more guns than the entire state of Oregon's police force. So I mean, that's some fucking crazy shit.
So the locals didn't welcome them with open arms?
No, so here's the thing. They kind of lied too. When they bought that property, they were going to be a farming commune, but when they got there, they built this is the most impressive thing about the whole documentary is they built an entire fucking city from scratch. We're talking infrastructure, we're talking piping, electricity. They bulldozed into this. There was like a box canyon that it was built in, this huge fucking, they're like, you have as much property as you can see with your sight line. It's this huge box canyon with like mountains around it, and they carved this whole thing out. They made a fucking river with like a dam. They made fucking vegetation grow and everything. They transformed this whole piece of land. And the other part of it that was unique too is all these people weren't just stupid people. Like a lot of these people were doctors, lawyers, architects. So they were using all these resources through the people that were the sannyasins, and then they built this whole community from nothing, literally like a whole city. And the whole goal was to get like I think 10 to 15,000 people living there, some crazy shit. So I mean, that's when you watch it, you'll see what I'm talking about. Like these people built a fucking city. I think that was the most impressive thing about it.
They were pretty organized.
Yeah,
give them that. They
Sounds like
really,
it. Man.
I mean, but if I could go back to the violence thing,
yeah,
for a second, because I think it's a fascinating question and distinction between these different points of view, but I guess the to boil it down, the idea is that for lack of a better word, the sin is in the reaction, not the action, and it's in the intention. It's all about the intention. So like one person could shoot somebody and kill them to save other people. And it's the same action. Let's say that somebody was robbing a bank. This is the example that the Swamiji always gives. If somebody's robbing a bank and he shoots somebody, the robber does, and he kills somebody, and the security guard has a gun and shoots the guy and takes him out to save other lives, he's done the exact same thing, but he's doing it to save other people. And,
so it's like back to the car thing. Like you can either save somebody with the car or kill somebody with the car.
That's right.
Which I agree with that concept, definitely. But I think that what he was saying about the nature of OSHO, that comment is like, if instead of turning, one cheek, he's like, you take both of theirs. That's going out of your way to do double the harm of what somebody's doing to you.
Yeah. No, I know. Yeah. I'm not here to justify.
When I looked into his eyes the first time, I'm like, this guy isn't a leader. This guy's the fucking devil. His eyes, like if you stare deep into his eyes, he just looks like soulless. Like it does, like nothing's there. And I know people just say, oh, he's stoic or he's focused or whatever. I've seen other spiritual leaders where you can see something good in their eyes, or like, you know, you can see the kindness. There was no kindness there. He smiles, but it was like a fake smile. It was really weird to me. I don't know. That part about it was creepy to me.
These eyes? Are you talking about these eyes?
Is that Rasputin or is that Rajneesh?
There's swirls in them. I'm being hypnotized right now, man.
Yeah, dude.
I'm gonna fucking freak out.
And yeah, he had a really kind of sinister way of talking too. He was like a mad wizard or something. But yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, I know what you mean. He has like a look about him, but you can tell just by what he actually just says and what he does. You know, he just was kind of up to no good. Now, some of it, like, some of it I can appreciate, some rebellion and being like, we're going to start our own thing. And
yeah, I don't care about that part. That's what I was saying when I watched it twice. The first time I watched it, I'm like, fuck these crazy people. They're fucking nuts. The town people did the right shit. They figured out the right, you know, whatever happened to them is what they had coming to them. And then I watched it again and I'm like, you know, there's some concepts here that could work. Like if they didn't all wear red, if they didn't actively fuck with other people, if they didn't, you know, if they weren't intruding on anybody, if they would have been part of that community, like when they came in, instead of doing their own thing and being separate completely to begin, if they would have built a new town shop or gas station or whatever, just something like, hey, we're here, we're part of the community type of thing. I think that they wouldn't have gotten the backlash that they actually got, but they came in hot, you know.
Absolutely. I thought that too. I was like, man, you guys got greedy, because I had the same thought. Like those people would have been cool. Like would have been cool with you guys if you just were cordial and not so abrasive.
They even say that they're like country people. Like we were going to see what they're all about. And they're like, oh, then we saw, and then the shit starts getting crazy.
Yeah. They were really aggressive and really like, but then that gets to the heart of it. I think there was something to be questioned about intentions and what they were, you know. So, but
what do you think his intentions were? He says that he was trying to create a Buddha field, which, you know, is this type of a scenario where you're building like a city where everybody's kind of on the same page, meditation and energy and everything like that. And it creates this like Buddha force field type thing, or energy field.
That's what I was gonna say. It almost sounds like a Merry Prankster type of feel.
It's like that, but I think the Merry Pranksters even had a better.
Well, I'm not saying that they were even anywhere near this. I'm just saying that collective consciousness, the acid test, having everybody kind of feeding off of each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, actually, there. That is a funny analogy between the two, because they did have some similar kind of things going on, but
the pranksters didn't have those kinds of numbers, though. These people had thousands of fucking people, dude.
Oh yeah,
they had 30,000 people worldwide. That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, it's really crazy. But the thing about doing a Buddha field or this or that, it's no. I mean,
don't you think you could do a Buddha field, though? Let's say hypothetically.
What's a Buddha field?
I mean, the way I interpreted it is this, like, think of it as like a mini globe within a globe, and everybody there is under this energy that's being created from this synergistic.
No, I think
kind of like what we're talking about, like all in one.
Sounds like brainwashing.
No, I think that's big trouble.
No, you do?
That sounds like just massive groupthink or something. The thing is, if you want to get to a certain point just as being a decent human being or anything.
That's what I mean. Like individually, I think it could have worked. If you had a bunch of individuals that wanted to do that, I could see something growing from that. But since they were all to the color scheme and the actions and the group shit, like everything was just too group. There was no individuality. And I think the individuality of each one of us and our creativity is what, makes everything grow. And I don't really see how that was happening there. But
no, I think it was a community that was it seemed to be kind of run by fear. I mean, I read an article by somebody that had lived there for a couple of years, I think. And they talked about your stuff was searched all the time. There were a lot of rooms were tapped, you know, like
How long did this thing go on for?
I think it was like 5 years there, maybe, or something, like maybe
But it was,
80.
but it was going on before all that.
He had been a leader since the 60s. He had been a spiritual leader since the 60s.
Yeah, they had a commune, or I guess technically, I guess they called it their ashram in India for a while.
Yeah.
And then I feel like they were maybe in a little bit of hot water over there.
They were about to get kicked out there.
Yeah. So
what, they're just a bunch of assholes? What is this?
No, it's think about like a big cult, just like posting up somewhere, you know.
Some cults are fucking nice, man. These people sound like
shit. Some of these people probably were nice, and some of them fucking had guns and fucked each other in the streets, you know. Like, this shit's gonna get out of the hand.
I mean, come on. The one lady, I forget her name, that attempted to murder the doctor.
Yeah, that Australian lady. That fucking lady was crazy.
Yeah, she went to jail for
10 years.
I mean that's not really the kind of thing you expect to see at like an ashram. Right. Attempted murder.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think here's the thing. I think he was enabling Sheela to do these fucked up things as a cover for himself, meaning that he knew shit was going to go down, but that's why he had these secretaries. It wasn't because, he needed shit done, but it was like a blanket of protection in case something happens, you know?
Well, it's like the Godfather.
I'm just a spiritual leader. I don't know anything, you know?
No, it's like in the Godfather when they're questioning Michael Corleone, and he's like, or the soldier, he's like, I'm a soldier, you know? And they
Don Ciccio. Don Ciccio.
So they always have separation from the people at the top, from the people that are doing the dirty work. Excuse me, just for that exact thing. It's like, I don't know. I wasn't doing.
He's got his brother in the courtroom as they're interrogating him. He's like, I don't know nothing. Michael Corleone, I don't know nothing.
That's a great scene.
That is.
So anyway, that's exactly, that's what it was,
What
same thing.
What did you think about the lawyer? And his personal lawyer in that documentary, because I think he was so emotional. I think he got hooked into this thing, and he seemed to be a level-headed one, meaning that he was still had a foot in reality and a foot in this crazy fucking thing. But the way that he still defended him was weird to me. I don't know. What did you think about that?
Well, my assessment of that guy would be that he was a bhakti yogi. Okay, so that's the yoga of devotion, and I think that there can be a real danger in like so-called spiritual pursuits like that, where you're so attached to a figure that you'll do anything, or you'll justify it in any kind of way because you're so devoted to your guru that if it's a guy that's having people do all this crazy stuff, or there's attempted murder going on, like you can kind of you'd be like, oh, it's my guru, he did.
What were the actual charges? Attempted murder?
Well,
that was a lot of shit.
Yeah,
well, there was a ton. Well, there was
tried to assassinate Attorney General of Oregon, the guy,
immigration
federal
fraud.
Government guy, immigration fraud. The what was the other thing? There was another thing. Oh, this was the fucked up thing. They bust in like 3,000 homeless people from all around the country just to partake in the elections, and then found out that those people weren't going to be able to partake in the elections. So they were stuck with all those people living in the commune. And not only that, that's actually a nice thing, and they took care of them for a little bit. But then when they realized they weren't going to be able to use their services, the fucked up thing is they were drugging. They would give them each 2 beers a day. That was the only thing those people were allowed to do from the streets. And everybody there, they weren't allowed to do drugs. Apparently, you're just allowed to drink a little bit, but they're allowed 2 beers a day. And
That's a drug.
They drugged the beers with like psychotrope or anti, whatever they're putting in to make crazy lithium or whatever. Sedatives, yeah, whatever. And they would drug these people. They had the person that was the head of like their doctor or whatever biologist there. That's who poisoned 700 people. They took salmonella cultures and went to salad bars across the area and just like sprayed fucking the shit out of their because they wanted to influence all these elections. The whole thing was they were going to take over. They were going to build this city by taking over. So first they took over the town of Antelope, that small town that we're talking about. They took it over because there was only 3 people voting on the fucking board. All they
Not
needed was
Antelope.
four people. So they got 4 people, overturned it, and then they changed the name from Antelope to Rajneesh Puram. Okay. And then so they did that. So that's what pissed the people off, you know, and then it kept going further and further. So then they went to the county. So that not only were they were on the like the town level or city level, they were taking it to the fucking county level. And that's when you had them poisoning all the people with the salmonella. You had the assassination attempts on the people that were trying to bring heat on them to get them the fuck out of there. You had all this crazy shit going on. And the thing is, the part of what took him down wasn't even all that. It was this guy that he's in the documentary. He's kind of a goofy guy, but he lived by there, and he was looking through their garbage, and he found all these like unshredded documents about all the immigration stuff and all that stuff. So it was almost like an accident that these people got taken down because they were getting some juice, you know?
So here's a picture of Antelope or whatever they called it.
That's where you should go hiking when you go.
I'm going up around here. But maybe we'll have to pop into Antelope.
Well, they said that the river that they built was fed from Mount Hood.
Oh, it's like 15 fish songs all coming from one state.
Nice. What, Chris, what do you think was the most shocking thing about the whole, obviously the whole thing's shocking and there's tons of different aspects to it, but what about it like made you go, wow, what the fuck?
I would say that I don't know that I would say it's shocking, but the fact that that guy and his organization could accrue so much money, and that people would be so willing to just give him.
Yeah.
There were a couple of people that were interviewed. They were like, yeah, we've given him, over $200,000, and I think that was back in the 80s.
So what, you join them and then you give them all your money and shit?
A lot of those people had money. Yeah. And they talk about like how during the 60s and stuff, like a lot of rich white European and American kids were going to India trying to gain enlightenment. And, it's like the hippie movement, they went there. And then a lot of these guys, there were actual spiritual leaders that helped transform people. But then you have your charlatans too, that'll take advantage of the situation. You got the same thing going on with ayahuasca ceremonies in South America right now. You have the couple real people, and then you got a bunch of fakers that are trying to cash in on the experience,
Right. I mean, I thought I heard figures of them having, something to the tune of like tens of millions of dollars or something.
He had 90 Rolls Royces and 2 Lear jets. So,
yeah.
I mean,
Jesus Christ.
And I mean, we talked a couple, I don't know which time it was, but we talked about the idea that, possessions in themselves are not, they're no problem. It's the attachment to them. And
well, obviously he liked Rolls Royce because even Sheila makes a point later on after they've scorned each other where she says something like, something about his Rolls Royces, like he needed his Rolls Royces, like something like that. So it seemed, I don't know if she was just saying that and putting the pressure on it, but it seemed like he had some sort of attachment to materialism too, because then he also, remember, he gets in cahoots after Sheila with the lady's husband who financed Godfather. I don't know if she was like fucking him or his new secretary or whatever that situation was, but they gave him like millions of dollars. I think they talked about.
Well, I mean, I think it's as simple as this. He had a philosophy to chase after your desires and attempt to satiate them. I mean, what could possibly go wrong?
So it's like the opposite of approach of the traditional, reductionist or egoless approach. He's going the complete out. He's trying to gain that same path through the opposite approach.
Well, I mean, I think it just sounds like there was a lack of discretion, like desires in themselves. You could have a good desire to do something that's going to get you further along your path, or you could have a desire that takes you the other way. It's really as simple as that. And then in Vedic philosophy, the idea is that you get yourself right up to the last desires to realize the self, to merge with the Brahman. And then after that, that's the last desire. So you're trying to diminish them through raising up. You drop the lower, raise up,
Right.
and then diminish them on the whole until, and that's why I think we talked a little bit about meditation and how the Swamiji that I follow, he's like, that's the last step. You can't shortcut. You can't just, without doing the work, sit down and meditate and shortcut. I think it's a little bit of a different definition. Maybe I've heard you talk about meditating. It's like it's almost like you're having a vision quest or something. It's like it's cool.
It's like it's a deep state. It's almost like entering your own space, which is your mind.
So, and I think that's awesome. But I think he's talking about a different kind of thing where
with the beads and the mantras, and you just keep repeating and you hold on to one fucking thing.
Well,
I know about that too. I don't. Like that's a whole different approach.
Yeah, it's a difference in definition. His definition of meditating is the effort to concentrate your mind on one single thing, and so, and he would argue that,
and I'm just trying to contact beings, motherfucker.
And so his argument would be, there's no way you can be remotely ready for that kind of thing until you do a massive amount of work, potentially over, whatever. It could take a long time. And
sure.
And so then if you have somebody saying, no, just go ahead and, just try to fulfill your desires and that'll do it. But the problem is that they seem, as far as I can tell in my life, to be not only insatiable, but let's say that you do satiate some desire. Well, it just creates a ton of other ones. They just keep multiplying.
Would you say obviously he wasn't Sadvik, he was like Tamasic at worst, but Rajasic at best.
I don't know. I can't sit here and I don't know, but
I will. I'll do it for you. He's Tamasic.
This guy sounds like he shares no principles than the stuff that I'm hearing from Chris, man.
It was kind of a different kind of thing, That's for sure.
It's not Vedanta, it's Devanta. It's the opposite, dude. It's his own fucking thing.
Multiple wives and cars.
Yeah.
Oh, he didn't have wives. He probably just banged all those chicks that loved him, no doubt.
It's crazy. So, and then they say the proof.
But meditation is different. I was watching not to cut you off. I was watching this thing on Netflix. There's a documentary. It's called On Meditation. It's not great.
Yeah,
I'm not going to recommend it. Okay. But it does show that each person has their own thing that they do that does do something for them. Like this thing had some celebrities, had like Russell Simmons, Giancarlo Esposito, a couple people David Lynch was in it too. There was a common thing too. David Lynch actually talks a lot about what you've described from us talking about on that documentary, about how the Atman and the everything, and then the Brahman or the Brahmins, everything, and the Atmans, so like he does go into a lot of the stuff that you talk about, and he shows like a little chart and does all this stuff. But I just thought the takeaway from me watching the whole thing was that everybody did it to like recenter themselves from whatever they were doing. A lot of them had got out of drugs and stuff. Some of them were like workaholics. You need to find that like balance where you just like are in communication with yourself, or you just the reset button kind of a thing. So that was the common thing among all of them. Whether you think meditation is going to gain you enlightenment or not, or whatever, I do think it has a physical effect on your mental and physical state to get like, meaning that like if you're all frantic or whatever and you start to meditate, you will be able to relax and slow down and kind of gradually get back into the flow of things,
Yeah, I agree. It does have it has an effect. And what Swamiji would argue, well, I guess I'm kind of like arguing for him. My take on it is that lots of things can give you a temporary sense of relief, but the but that's not the pinnacle of being a human, you know, and that's the bar that he's tried to set for himself. And so, yes, I mean, if I go up north for a nice weekend and stay by a lake or something, that's really nice. You know, you get a little downtime and you reset and you feel rejuvenated. You get out in the woods and stuff, but that's not it's not like the end game kind of thing. So I think that the point would be that you can be seduced by that quick fix kind of thing, and then maybe lose sight of the larger goal if you have it. I mean, it's just different stuff for different people. But he uses it as the last tool to get to become realized, you know.
Is this the commune?
Yeah, that looks like it.
This landscape looks amazing.
Yeah,
they did all that. It looked like poop dirt.
Oh, really? They carved that out?
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
Wait till you watch this thing. There's fucking 10 bulldozers and fucking cranes and shit. These people are cranking shit.
Yeah.
Looks like a circus.
Yeah, I mean they built a huge farm. They had cattle and all sorts of shit. I mean they literally built this thing from nothing. That's what they were saying they were most proud of. I guess that I would think that was, forget about the ideals of Rajneesh. I think it was about them building something like that from scratch. When you build something like that from your own hands, you do have an attachment to it, and they were willing to fucking fight for it. So I think that was part of it. I don't even think it was all spirituality. I think it was, like I just said, like attachment to your creativity, and they didn't want to let that go.
Yeah, for sure they didn't. No. But yeah, I mean, the key word there, attachment, you know, they were just, attached to it.
Do you think that, like you were saying earlier about it can be tough if you get too attached to anything or whatever, but do you think that a lot of these people that have spiritual leaders or whatever, I would think that a real spiritual leader would explain to them not to get too attached to that person that's teaching them, and just to more attach themselves to the knowledge or the wisdom that is thrust upon them, you know, as opposed to, it seemed like it was reversed with this. It was like, you know, he enjoyed it, and then later on they renounced the Rajneesh religion, and he makes everybody throw away their colors and their badges and all their stuff. But it just seemed like that was convenient at that point, you know.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think you said it. I mean, if that kind of attachments, whether it's to a substance, whether it's to, you know, whatever, if it's to a leader, then it's going to cause big trouble, you know? So yeah, I think there is an accountability for somebody in that kind of position to be like, look, you know, that's one of the things, you know, I always go back to the Swami, man. I mean, he says, don't believe me. Think about this. What makes sense to you, you know? That's always the approach for everything. You know, look at any given situation, any person, assess, and then what makes sense, what doesn't. Not like, whatever I do, follow me, do what I say. You know, like that culture of fear that it seemed like they had is not. I don't see that as being ideal for any kind of growth.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that for sure.
They're calling this guy the guru of poison. Bioterrorist spread salmonella in Oregon.
Yeah,
I mean, the band Poison would definitely like this content,
man. Yeah, I mean, there's just so many crazy things that have. I mean, in the documentary is 6 parts. I think it's each one's like 45 minutes to 50 minutes long. And I just think they did an excellent job. Even like the music selection I've never even heard half those songs, but I felt like they fit perfectly for like the scenes, you know?
Yeah, there was one in particular that sounded like
I want to look up that song, you know? I don't know what the fuck that is.
Yeah, there was a song that sounded like My Morning Jacket. That was
I know what you're talking about. I'm like, that is My Morning Jacket, I think.
Was it really them?
I don't know if it is. It sounded exactly like one of their fucking songs, like the one from If You Touch Me, whatever that CD is.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I only know Z, I think. But they but it was as far as the production of the documentary, it's excellent.
The Duplass brothers.
The Duplass brothers.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. And you know, I felt like it was pretty balanced as far as
Both point of views, you mean?
Yeah, but now I think that in this article that I mentioned, I read, they were saying there was another point of view that was left out too. That a lot of the regular Joe kind of members there didn't know any of what was going on with a lot of this stuff. Whether I don't know if I believe that, but they were just like, we were afraid of this lady. These people.
I mean, I believe that because there's part where I think. That one chick that says her name's like Sunny or whatever. I think she's just like somebody that's in the inner circle.
Mm-hmm.
She talks about how she has to pick up, like she's trying to pick up the roses off the front of the Rolls Royce. And he's like, no, don't take one. He's like, take them all. And he like smiles at her. And Sheila saw that. And the next day, the lady that grabbed the roses was fucking poisoned.
Yeah.
So it's like, like I do believe that there was some maliciousness that nobody knew about, like in terms of like, the inner workings of all. I'm sure there was people involved too, but I mean, I don't think you could know everything. I think it was really her pulling the strings.
Do you know what episode that song was on that you like?
Gosh, I don't know. Maybe the third or fourth.
Yeah, third or fourth.
It was the third one. I can almost guarantee it.
I'm looking at. I'm not recognizing. There's a lot of Marlon Williams on there.
It really fit the part, but even though I said like I thought it was pretty balanced, at the same time I do acknowledge that a documentary is also it's there for entertainment, so there's a narrative and a story being told.
Sure.
And, the idea that they're actually giving an accurate account of things, I'm not sure.
You got to make it interesting, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, here's what I'll say. After watching the second time, which was like yesterday, I finished watching it, and then last night I'm like, there's nothing on. What am I gonna watch on Netflix? I pull up, George Harrison documentary. Okay, I get fucking sucked into this thing. That guy was more of a fucking spiritual leader than this other fucking guy that actually is a spiritual leader. Because like George Harrison like knew all these principles that we're talking about, but he was trying to actually live it like every day, and he fell victim to, the drug addiction because Billy Preston was a big fucking crack cokehead and got him into all that stuff after he had already, found his path, with his Ravi Shankar and, I forget what his spiritual leader was called.
Bhaktivedanta.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, and I've read several of his books too. When we were at Bonnaroo that one year, what year was that? 2010, maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
When fish played in
it was a hilarious scene. So these guys were all like, I'm not sure if you and Rogers were there yet, but we were down there. I bought Bonnaroo tickets for a bunch of people. We went down there, and then Higgins was there with his girlfriend at the time. And anyway, everybody was all passed out because they were, up all night and stuff. And I was up. I don't know if I was doing like yoga outside the tent or what was going on, but this monk guy came over to me. And he was a disciple of this Bhaktivedanta, and he's like, what are you doing, man? I'm like, just doing some yoga. He's like, what? And it was like, I don't know what time it was, like 7 a.m. or whatever. And then
he's in the middle of the mosh pit.
So this guy had a bunch of books, and I bought a bunch of books from him. I bought like,
I was with you. I remember that.
I bought like 10.
Don't buy this shit, man. This guy's peddling.
No, I read it. I actually.
All those guys that sell, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of people on the lots that are just selling.
Don't buy books. There's plenty of people selling drugs around here.
No, I'm glad you bought them. I'm sure there's knowledge in those books, but a lot of that stuff is.
There's knowledge in those drugs too, my friend.
Well, no, I mean, I looked at what the books were. I like there were what it was a few Bhagavad Gitas, and I still have the one I just actually
Not the orange book.
No, well, this particular one was yellow. I can remember.
Was he in like a gown or something, or did he look like he was in street clothes?
He's just straight up in a gown. He looked like Yoda.
He was in full garb.
So he was like Hare Krishna guard.
Yeah,
buy a book, you will.
And actually, the Hare Krishna thing, like that's where this guy was really big on that. Like that's why George Harrison has that in My Sweet Lord is the the background vocal. Well, is because this guy was particularly into that that chant. And anyway, so like that was George Harrison's guy.
Yeah, when they talked about recording that song for the first time, they I think they had Billy Preston and some Motown singer. I forget who they had, maybe Seals or something. Anyways, they said, how can we put a gospel theme to this, but make it sound like how it does, you know? And then they came
Yeah.
up. It was like a combination of like, you know, Christianity and Hare Krishna, kind of, you know.
It's
Because he wanted to keep his
obviously.
Christianity for his mother. His mother was like always on him about you know, being close with God, and you know, maybe not in the form that it was. But then he says something about telling his mom, he's like, I know Jesus and God even better now from knowing this other part of, you know, religion, which is, you know, Eastern philosophy.
Mm.
Mm.
No, I'm really thinking about that. Like, yeah, I mean, I guess as long
I
as
feel
you're
that way. I feel like every time I learn, when we talk about this with you, or we talk about, you know, with any of our guests, or I'm just reading stuff or doing research. Right now, I'm reading the Gnostic Gospels. These things are blowing my fucking mind, dude. I can't even tell you how much truth there is in those, and whether it's real truth or just part of the path, I don't know yet. But you know, you look at ancient Egyptian, you know, hieroglyphs. They've got the Gnostic symbol, and ancient Greece, gnosis is where it comes from. I mean, you look at all these ancient, there was something that they knew that was lost. So I think that there's something there. But, you know, this idea that we're flawed, there might come into a part where I'm thinking where the God that we think that created this universe might not be the ultimate God. It might just be the demiurge or a part of that. So, like, if we're, I don't want to get into this. This is a whole nother episode, but if we have a piece of the divine spark within us, initially we came about as like a forethought, meaning that we were a thought of God, a part of God, and then there was an error because that part of God wasn't thinking with the balance of the male and the female perspective, just the female, and it created an error, which was this demiurge that created our universe. So if you think about it, it makes sense because we are all flawed. Nobody's perfect. If Jesus was or Christ was a perfect being, nobody's been able to accomplish that since, you know.
Are you
Happy
gonna go into
Gilmore.
a Chris Rock fucking bit now?
Happy Gilmore accomplished that feat no more than 2,000 years ago, bro. I don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, no, I just think that I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I'm not saying the God that created our universe is evil or anything like that. I just think that if you look at a lot of stuff, there's a mistake. And this thing talks about how there's 3 points of life. There's matter, there's soul, and then there's spirit. Matter is everything you see is matter, you know. Soul is what gives us our animation, our who, you know, what we are, whatever. And then our spirit is our true spark, our true spirit, you know.
yeah, well, I mean, this is like, you know,
It's getting real political. It's
you know,
getting real
political.
religious.
No, it doesn't get political.
No,
No,
no.
so
What
I
kind of
was.
politics are you into? What the fuck?
No, I'm saying no politics, no religion. Yet we're going to it every time now.
Oh yeah, yeah.
We
No,
will.
I'm not going to get into religion. No, like this is I was going to say about that idea of we're flawed, or you know, that whole thing.
Because what we were created, but meaning the person that created us thought he was creating a copy of the actual spiritual realm, and he's not God, so he was unable to create that. That's why we have flaws in what we are and who we are.
Yeah, like what I was going to say was studying the Gita this morning. The analogy that was given in the verses I was reading was about that similar to how you can have a dream with multiple different characters that you don't perceive as yourself, but they're really just parts of your own being, your own subconscious. These characters in your dream, there could be awful people in your dream doing, you know, I've had crazy awful things happening in my dream that I would never do, you know, in real life. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm thinking about some crazy stuff in the back of my mind or whatever, I don't know, but they're in the dream, let's say.
Well, you're watching documentaries like this.
well the idea is that all of those things are just a conditioned state, but you're really truly the waker. And and you're not really the characters in the dream. The characters in the dream are flawed, but you're in a conditioned state there. And that's why they call it self-realization. You wake up to your true self. You can't understand it. You can't feel it emotionally. You can't touch it physically. You have to become it. So it's like the dreamer thinking this whole thing's going down in his dream. It feels as real as anything. And then he wakes up, he's like, oh yeah, I'm not that. And all those people that were in the dream, maybe if you're a kid, it's a monster that's chasing you and it scares you. Or if you're older, it's things that scare you in life. Maybe it's losing somebody. You wake up and you're like, oh, that was just a dream. That's not me. Like, that's the analogy that's given. It's not that there's a flawed creator. I'm
Right.
I'm just saying the idea is that we only seem flawed because we're in a conditioned state and we don't know our true self.
Yeah, but if somebody fucking kills somebody,
that is the argument.
No, I'm saying that we're awake right now.
No, but that is the argument that we're not. We're not.
So what the Gnostics believe
awake.
is that we're trapped in this body, meaning that we were taken as a part of, like, we were each a part of God. We were taken from God and put into these bodies as a recreation. A physical manifestation that is incorrect and an error. Like, I've actually read in multiple books now that evil isn't even really evil; it's just error. So that's kind of how I've been looking at it. Is just like a lack of ignorance. It's not necessarily malevolent. There is malevolence too, but it's more just ignorance usually when bad things happen than it is anything else.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, to bring it back full circle, though, I mean, I just think that with this guy, this Bhagwan guy, I don't know, man. I just feel like his nature wasn't that great. I don't know.
Well,
no, I'm not trying to talk. I mean, look, if he helped people and he made people feel good, that's good. But I don't think that it's like a flash in the pan. I don't think that anything he was doing will really gain these people or help these people reach enlightenment or give them the actual tools, kind of like what you're talking about, how your path, like, I'm not, forget us being friends. I think that's a good path. It's not something that I'm going to do or that necessarily I believe, but I respect and understand exactly what you're doing, So it's like, if they did a documentary about you, I would say this person's a good person. They're trying to do good things. There's a real thing there. We're talking about people that got guns and tried to assassinate people, fucking poison people, fucking people in the streets. It's just
let me pause you there, because if it, like, in that hypothetical, if you did a documentary about me, you'd have to include all the times when me and Hogan were younger and all the trouble I was causing.
I partied with you too, dude. You're fucking crazy, but
Watch it out.
I still think that your craziness back then was still better than the fucking.
Not really.
Not
really.
Were you giving people salmonella? I don't know.
I didn't do that, but
you were fucking people in the streets. That was happening.
that was my role.
And it was Kevin. That is who you were fucking.
Jesus, bro.
Yeah. Well, but
you can make jokes, but I can't.
But the thing about Osho, though, that dude, I think the thing that really sets it apart, though, is that he was in a position, like, I think it's with a lot of things, if you're in a position of massive influence and then you're doing, that's why there's so much more accountability if you're on that kind of level of influence, because then people are looking to you for all these answers. And if you're taking advantage for your own gain and all this kind of stuff, I mean, it's like doubly bad, I don't know, bad is bad, I guess. And that's for anybody to decide what is.
Right.
But if you're in that position, though, like, and to be under the guise of calling yourself a spiritual leader kind of thing, like, it's awful,
To take a little bit of different look at this, though, think about this. Did you ever watch that Grateful Dead documentary on Amazon?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how many parts it is, the Scorsese one. Anyways, there's a whole episode on how they were at one point trying to make the Grateful Dead a religion or get religious status, and that Jerry was uncomfortable with the whole idea. He didn't want to have anything to do with it. He separated himself entirely from that whole. He didn't want the power. So this is a man that could have done 10 times more than what this Rajneesh guy did because of the exposure, the money that they had coming. I mean, the Grateful Dead wasn't rich, but you know, they eventually gained access to all that later on with everything that's happened. But in terms of, he had the power, he had all the people that loved him. He was basically kind of like their spiritual leader, you know, people that follow the Grateful Dead. I mean, we could talk about this in terms of like Trey, like, yeah, people see, I've been at fish shows where I'm basically looking at people praying, you know, that's what kind of what's going on there. Maybe they're not asking Trey for things or anything like that, but you know, it's kind of a spiritual experience. And I think that Jerry had everybody in the palm of his hand, and he decided to let these people just fall through his fingers and let the chips fall where they land. So I think that's a example of the opposite of this Rajneesh guy. I think Jerry Garcia, with all of his flaws, drug addiction and cheating on women and whatever, I think he was actually a good person because he understood. He didn't want the other people's responsibility upon him. He just wanted to be, you know, himself, basically.
Yeah, and I also think that Jerry, from what I can tell, was like a bit of an anarchist. You know, he was kind of like, he didn't seem like he dug authority too much. You know, he didn't like other people and being authoritative to him, and he certainly didn't seem to like when all the fences, like those scenes, like when you see Deer Creek and they're jumping, like the mobs and stuff, and they were like, Jerry, you got to write a letter or this thing, and he's like, no, who am I to say anything to anybody about any of this? And I think Phil Lesh ended up doing it. I think that's how that went down. But he was like, no, I'm not gonna. He's like, I'm nobody for that. I'm not doing that.
That's what he says in the beginning of the movie. He's like, I just want to have fun.
Yeah.
No responsibilities. And that's kind of what that whole culture was built on. But again, at some point, you're going to look to someone for some kind of answers. And
I think the best thing I like from him and was he goes, I like weird or something. He's like, I'm really into weird.
But at least Jerry Garcia wasn't under the guise of some kind of deity, kind of thing. Like he was like the opposite. He's like, I'm a rock.
Well, he was into the Urantia papers. That's how we even read this fucking thing, was the fact that this guy was.
But he wasn't presenting himself. He
hated
the fact that people would.
That's my point. Yeah, that's my point. And regardless the fact that, go ahead, sorry.
Of his whatever he thought about spirit and matter and whatever else, he wasn't like come to me for answers,
right.
sannyastis or whatever. He was like, let's make music and it's a thing we do together, band, audience. Like he just I don't know, like, yes, extremely flawed guy, a genius, a real true authentic artist, which is really, really rare, but he wasn't selling some kind of like this snake oil thing. Well, you could argue some of it, there was a lot of bullshit to the whole hippie thing, and there was, but
a lot of them were just bums living in Haight-Ashbury.
Well, but he, anyway, yeah. So that's the huge bummer about it is, let's say that Osho did master certain aspects or have, a really great control over his mind or his emotions, or like have a real power over those parts of himself and master certain things. And then people are attracted to that kind of composure or like that mastery. And intellect, he seemed like, as crazy as I thought some of his views were, he was not a stupid person.
No, you could tell he was very well read, and they showed his apartment early on. This guy had 1 billion books.
Although you could be the most intellectual guy and all that stuff, and then do the dumbest stuff. Like look at where he ended up. That's what I was going to say way earlier. The kind of the proof is in the pudding. Like, not that bad things don't happen to good people, but things like that don't really happen to good people. I don't want to say good people, but people that are doing good things don't usually end up with attempted murder situations going on, a stockpile of ammo and guns.
How about when they put him in prison and they go, they threw him in a cell with somebody and he had contagious herpes and they were all like worried for him.
Well,
like, what's this dude doing? Is he, like, who cares? It's contagious herpes. Unless the guy's attacking him, I think it's fine. But the thing is that was the thing. So then when they arrested him, they took him across the country, which would have taken one plane, one flight. It took them 3 weeks because they stopped at every fucking prison across the country and put him in there. And this guy was in some of the worst. So they basically made this guy give himself up to get shipped out of the country, basically, because he was just so fragile in his older age. There's no way he would have been able to handle that for much longer.
He was getting opened up.
Yeah.
And then there were I don't know if any of it was substantiated or what, but there were definitely allegations of I thought I heard something about morphine usage with him. Yeah. And
they made accusations. So like Sheila was saying that lady that became his secretary, that lady that her husband financed The Godfather, whatever. Remember they talked about that? That lady was like a rich Hollywood socialite, and she apparently they were getting him hooked on like morphine, or I forget what else they said, something else too.
Let me pause.
Oh yeah, nitrous.
Can we pause right there? Nobody gets you addicted to morphine.
Right.
You have to willingly put a need. I mean, that's absurd. You know what I mean? I'm not saying what you're saying. I'm saying like, in other words,
I agree with you.
Finish his responsibility in becoming addicted to morphine. Or to anything. It's like nobody makes you do anything, and you can't in one instance pretend to be this all-powerful enlightened being and then but this actor came and gave me morphine, so you can't.
Hey man, it's from Hollywood, it's cool.
I agree. It was like the typical arc. Like think of like an arc of like a character on a show, or he starts off as this young genius and then gets all this success and then has this grand idea and tries to accomplish the grand idea, accomplishes the grand idea, and then fucks it all up with, drugs and power, misuse of power and all sorts of shit. So it is like a typical archetype kind of a situation there. But
it's a crazy story. Yeah. It's really, really crazy. It's kind of like, I have a similar feeling of like, is this real? Like when I saw Searching for Sugar Man about Rodriguez.
I never saw that.
Yeah, you
gotta see that, bro.
No, I remember everybody telling me to watch it, and then for some reason I never watched it. I should watch that.
You got it.
His dad's in it, bro. You got to see.
Is he?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Rudolph Steiner's in this thing.
Yeah. No, it's really it's the kind of thing you're like. I read a review where they put it perfectly. They said this movie, if it were a fictional movie, people would go to it and they'd be like, "This is contrived and fake, and this is stupid." But it really happened, and so therefore it's like it's got a whole different power to it. It's kind of like this OSHO thing. It's like this happened. These people came in here and built a city and then try to take over a county, and poison people and whatever. Alleged, who I don't know, but
allegedly.
Yeah. Well, the Duplass brothers must have had the locks on this story because I've never heard shit about it.
I mean, yeah, it's crazy.
I think anybody that can make a documentary about something like that you never heard of, but it's just so outlandish, are like the best documentaries.
That's what Searching for Sugar Man is. It's really.
Where can I watch that? Is that on like Netflix or
let me see if I can
on demand or something?
I don't think it's on Netflix, but you can definitely find it.
Okay.
I would think.
I do remember that though. In fact, I remember Kevin telling me to watch it, but I never watched it.
It's a well done documentary.
Oh yeah, it's really good. I think it's probably on Amazon or
I think Amazon almost has every single movie.
Yeah.
Let's see, watchdocumentaries.com. It's on there.
Yeah, you should. You should watch it and then have.
Looks like it's free, dude. Yeah.
I mean, that's why I'm telling. I highly recommend Wild Wild Country to anybody, though. Like I just said, I mean, even that Grateful Dead documentary that Scorsese produced, and what the George Harrison All Things Must Pass, like all those are fucking great. But I think there was something about this that just touched a nerve with me. Maybe it's because I'm learning about all sorts of different, ancient religions and different things like that right now, and spirituality. But I just think that something about it was just well produced. With a crazy story. I don't know. And it just, the way that it was shot, Yeah, it was in the 80s, but it almost felt like it should have been in the 60s. You know, I don't know. It was crazy.
Yeah, I think that the combination of really beautiful shots that they took of that scenery there,
Oh yeah.
and then how much footage that there was from like news clips and all like actual footage of.
Yeah, I was shocked at how they got all it. There's videos where I'm like, did somebody really videotape that back then? But then I remembered too, they talk about when they first came into town and the townspeople were giving them a hard time, they started videotaping the townspeople doing random shit. So obviously, maybe that lawyer guy or somebody had a lot of these videotapes. So that's probably where they got a lot of that footage was from the Rajneesh people, you know, the town people walking around and looking at them and playing with their guns and different shit. You know, that's probably where they got that footage.
I know that. Yeah, it's really something. So yeah, as a documentary, yeah, it was awesome.
And the link to it's even crazier because there's this other guy that lived around the corner, like part of that property. That this Bill Bowerman guy or something, I think that was his name, created Nike with Phil Knight, and these were two. The guy's son was one of the guys like really pushing to have these people fucking in him too, but he was older by then. But it's like they're trying to get these people. Like the guy that created Nike like lives right there. You know, it's fucking crazy.
That's a strange plot twist as well. That the Nike's founder's son is like the main guy to kick
and he's like a
out.
total hick too. He's got a cowboy hat on. He's got his revolver kicking. This guy's a fucking real cowboy.
Well, I'm getting excited to go to Oregon. Or Oregon, whatever, however the fuck
should. They still have all those like A-frame houses are still just sitting there. You should go check it out. They're all like abandoned and shit.
That's where I'm camping, bro.
You should go get some
now
creepy
it's a Christian
footage.
youth camp.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot. I did see at the end. No, dude, that Christian camp looks fucking dope. I want to go
nice.
there.
Yeah.
The thing looks fucking unbelievable.
It looks nice.
But all right, well, is there anything else you want to talk about here?
I don't know. You know, like, I mean, there's like there's a lot with it because on one hand you could just sit here and talk about the documentary on its own,
right? And
then you could compare things about what Osho believed and talked about, and so like the main distinction, as far as I can tell from what he was putting forth in Vedanta, as far as I understand it, is that Osho was saying, go, you know, satiate your desires. You know, maybe he did talk about having some discrimination, but I didn't hear too much of that. I heard just go, you know, whatever.
Right.
And then you have people saying, no, elevate them to drop the lower ones to raise yourself up. And I think that's a big takeaway I got was like, you know, like that Sheela woman, for instance, was a real, I thought the kind of the epitome of somebody that was really following that fame and power vasana, you know, to jail. She was taking it wherever it took her, you know.
Do you know about that guy that he talked about in that, like, because supposedly this whole thing was a big Gurdjieff experiment, which was this guy, I guess, this Gurdjieff guy would go around. He was a spiritual leader, and he would force people into tough scenarios to see their true nature, see how their consciousness would evolve through that. And I guess what that the Rajneesh was trying to do was, from what I got, the interpretation based on that part of it was that Rajneesh was putting Sheela in the position and watching her to watch her consciousness transform good, bad, and different. But it was, this whole thing was just one big Gurdjieff, whatever the fuck this guy's name is. See if we can pull this guy up. One big experiment, you know? So like, in terms of, you know, if we're talking about the whole thing as a whole, yeah, bad shit happened, and that was the experiment, was trying to do this. I mean, I could have looked at it, you know, anybody that really had a good grasp on spirituality and probably would have been able to deduct that it probably wasn't going to work out. But it just seemed like instead of, you know, your typical spiritual leader, like you talk about yours and everything, it seemed like this guy was just trying to like experiment with stuff and wasn't really
morphine.
Yeah, he wasn't really
the good stuff.
He wasn't really grounded in anything that really, I never heard him say anything that really opened my eyes spiritually. Like I listened to books, on tape and read books and read articles and stuff all day long about all this kind of stuff. And I usually pick one or two things from each of those things. I'm like, that's a fucking cool little thing there. And I didn't get any of that from his work or his teachings from what they showed. But I learned something from the way that had all unfolded, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, but I wholly reject that whole idea that he was like, it was some kind of like massive, I'm going to put Sheila in these awful positions to see how she does kind of thing. I think he was just
not on purpose. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying,
Oh.
Let me see here. Let's see here if I can find this thing.
They should have gave Sheila a better name.
I don't know. I can't find this guy. I have to look up his name. But this,
the other thing, hold on real quick. This is something you
Yeah.
gotta look at. Maybe we can have a part 2 or something. But the other thing in this article that I looked at, and I didn't go, you know, this person was saying was that whole story that they put forth in the documentary about how her first husband died, and she was like, I felt. They were saying that she told this ex Rajneesh, whatever they're called, that she poisoned him just like they had the injection that they were trying to do to the doctor. That she did that to her husband, and it was and OSHO had ordered that.
Wow.
And that was like, people knew that.
Well, because
obviously, but you have to look at the fact that obviously they were willing to kill for him.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, dude. What do you mean the gun range? It showed these people have Uzis and shit. Of course, they're walking around with Uzis. It looks like a Steven Seagal movie from the fucking 90s with like guards and shit.
Yeah, but even beyond that, we know that the one woman, she went to jail and pled guilty.
Oh yeah, that lady's fucked up.
Attempted murder or whatever whatever they gave her with that, attempted whatever manslaughter or whatever. I don't know what you would call it.
Well, she went to jail for 10 years, so.
But the fact is, people were willing to do that, and this person was like, yeah, that whole sob story about the husband was all BS.
Yeah, because she said this. The real story that she tells is that she loved him. They were so fucking in love, and she met him in college, and everything was wonderful. And then he developed lymphoma or something, maybe some type of cancer. I think it was lymphoma, and he kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And then she says she had a weird feeling one night, and she went to OSHO. And she says, I think blah, blah, blah her husband's going to die. And he goes, he is, or something.
Yeah.
And then, the next day this guy was dead.
Poison you gave him.
And then OSHO goes, okay, now the next day after he dies, he goes, okay, now he's dead. Now it's time to start the new chapter. So maybe there was something to that. I believe what you're saying. I mean, I wouldn't rule that out. No, looking into this devil's eyes, but
I mean, I don't know. I have no idea, but anyway, so
don't stare into the poster, man. I'm already freaking out over here.
Kevin's hard. But yeah, so I don't know. I think this was super fucking interesting. I could do a whole nother episode. We didn't even cover everything, you know.
There's a ton of interesting subplots, and after Hogan sees it,
let's make him watch it now, and now we'll do another episode about it after he's seen it, and now we can really get into this shit.
Get the Maurice take.
Yeah.
You're gonna pry my eyes open. You better watch this one in one sitting.
We cut your eyelids off.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Well, you didn't spoil anything, so.
Oh, we spoiled the whole thing, rotten. No, just watch. Even if we told the whole thing, it's still one of those things. I think I've watched it twice. So I've already seen it and I watched it again. So
well, it sounds like you got a lot of time on your hands.
No, I'm a fucking late bird.
Kidding,
no, I sometimes I can't go to bed, and that's when I watch. Like last night, I watched All Things Must Pass. Sometimes I got a little bit of time at night.
That's a good.
Yeah, it's good, but it's long.
It is.
Phil Spector's you want to talk about a fucking nutball? Phil Spector is a fucking nutball. He's a
wackadoodly.
He talks like that. One of his eyes is like way bigger than the other one. It's like that. This shit's fucking crazy.
He's pretty. Yeah.
Have you ever seen that? Have you ever seen that on HBO? Al Pacino as Phil Spector. This shit's fucking nuts.
No, but I was gonna say that the only thing that I don't like about All Things Must Pass is the production on it. I hate that. Like,
I agree with that.
echoey snare drum thing or whatever they
The
did.
beginning was too loud. I had to keep turning this thing down. I'm like, why the fuck is this thing
And
so
that's
loud?
a great album, though. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Problem with Scorsese? Oh, you're talking about the actual album, not the movie.
Right.
I'm talking about the album.
Like the
Phil
last
Spector.
waltz, that was probably easy for them because they were mixing it like it was a music, you know. So like this was a little bit different because they're putting clips in with the movie with overdubbing voices and shit. I agree with them. I don't think they did it as well as they could have.
Wait, isn't the movie called Living in a Material World?
Yeah,
I think
no,
it
no.
is. Yeah.
Did you? I think you guys are misunderstanding me. I don't like the production on the album. The actual.
Right, no,
record.
I got you. I got you.
Oh, I thought you meant the movie. I thought the
No.
movie was kind of. I don't think I think these, like, if they took a Duplass brother approach, the organization of it would have been a little bit better.
No,
Maybe
it's
those guys are
good, bro.
just
It's
fucking
Scorsese,
geniuses.
man. Don't talk shit about my boy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that Grateful Dead documentary was good. I've seen better.
I thought that was cool. Yeah, that one was interesting because they had like this.
I enjoy Anthem to Beauty, which is Anthem of the Sun and American Beauty, like the making of it. That's a fucking great one, right?
Good. I've seen that a bunch of times. Yeah, but that Grateful Dead one, they had like cliffhangers at the end. It was weird. It was like, this is like,
does Jerry die?
What is this? What was the show with the drugs? Gosh, what's the one with the guy with the meth?
What?
The meth.
Oh, Breaking Bad?
Breaking Bad. It was like Breaking Bad cliffhangers at the end of the Grateful Dead show.
Does Pigpen die or not? What's going on here?
Did Pigpen do crystal meth with Bryan Cranston? Yes, he did.
Next time.
How long will Bruce Hornsby last?
Right. But as far as the All Things Must Pass, I love the album so much. I've never really listened. If I gotta listen to it with headphones on, then I can really hear it sonically.
Oh yeah.
See what you're talking about.
Put those ones you got on right there.
Hey.
Put them on, and you'll hear it.
Fire it up. All right, boys. Well,
good stuff.
All right, good episode. Watch that documentary. We'll do a follow up on this, but we'll catch you guys next time, and peace out.
take it easy.
Later.